For conservatives, DEI programs have become a hot-button political issue. I mean, it's right up there in terms of importance for them as trans people in sports, and that's really saying something. Of course, DEI being this idea that businesses and schools and other institutions would consider things like diversity and people's backgrounds and certain disadvantages that people may have when making hiring decisions, or in the case of schools, admissions decisions. Conservatives believe that that is wrong and that we have to be purely meritocratic when it comes to these types of decisions in our institutions. They don't like DEI. They don't like affirmative action. They've made that clear. They don't like the concept of equity instead of equality. It's why people like Charlie Kirk get nervous whenever he sees a black pilot, because he worries that it could be a diversity hire who could crash the plane. They apply the DEI fear-mongering in situations where it doesn't even apply. Like, for example, following the Baltimore bridge collapse last week, there were right-wingers who were blaming the collapse on diversity hires. They were calling the mayor of Baltimore a diversity hire, arguing that the most qualified people didn't get the jobs at the bridge and on the ship, and that's exactly why this happened, even though there was no evidence whatsoever behind the claim. They were comfortable making it. Well, it turns out that there is a glaring contradiction when it comes to Republican stances on these topics like DEI and affirmative action, which is that policies like these are the exact reason why Republicans have political power in the United States to begin with, or at least have the chance at having political power. What do I mean by this? Well, Republicans benefit greatly from the DEI programs that are enshrined in the United States Constitution. As many of you know, we don't pick our president based on the popular vote. I wish we did, but we don't. That would be the meritocratic way to do it. No, instead, we do so based on the Electoral College that gives extra weight to smaller states, and who just so happens to live in those smaller states disproportionately. It tends to be white, rural folks who are more likely to vote Republican. Their votes count more towards who becomes president than do people who live in a blue city in a blue state, for example. If not for the Electoral College, we know that George Bush would not have gotten elected to the presidency in 2000, and Donald Trump would not have gotten elected to the presidency in 2016. Now, does that sound like equality to you, or does it sound more like equity? How about the United States Senate? That's even more of a DEI program, in my opinion. Every state, regardless of population, has 2 senators. So California's 39 million people are represented by 2 senators. Exactly the same as Wyoming, even though they only have 600,000 people. They also get 2 senators. This means that the Senate skews more right-wing than it otherwise would. We have a razor-thin Senate right now. I'm not so sure that would be the case if not for the DEI programs in the Constitution and the structure of the United States Senate. Now, what arguments will Republicans come back with? They'll say that, well, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. Yes, so exactly. You agree that we are more of a DEI-like system here in this country than a meritocratic one. Maybe they'll also say that diversity and disproportionate representation is important because it's what the founders wanted to ensure a wide array of voices get heard in the government, and that people in smaller rural states can be heard, and that they're not largely ignored by the people who live in the larger states and the big cities. They can make this argument, but it's hypocritical when contrasted with their opposition when it comes to people making decisions in other types of institutions, like when it comes to corporate boardrooms or university admissions. You can't have it both ways. Now, they could also say, hey, we're just dealing with the system that we have in place here. We're dealing with the cards we were dealt. This is what the framers of the Constitution set up as our system of government, and we have to work within the system. But this flies in the face, of course, of the respect and deference that Republicans so often pay to the founding fathers. It makes them have to admit that the founders were wrong to make this argument, so I'm not sure that they even want to go there. They don't want to say that the founders were wrong to set up this system of government in this way in the first place. Conservatives are also trouble doing this because, again, this is exactly the system that has given them political power, and so they can't come out opposed to the exact reason why they're able to win elections and win so many seats in Congress and the presidency on occasion. It's not a politically viable path for them to do, to be opposed to how we set things up now. So I view this as a clear contradiction. If there's a better counter argument, I'd love to be made aware of it. There are, of course, countless examples of Republicans praising the Electoral College, but also being against diversity programs. Just to give one such example, Senator Lindsey Graham has argued against Democratic efforts to abolish the Electoral College, worrying they would shift power away from rural states to large blue states. Yet, he worries affirmative action is providing benefits to one group at the expense of another who have done nothing wrong. Graham's position, again, is not unique to him. It's rather emblematic of the Republican Party's stance these days. I'd love to hear why it's totally okay to have a DEI program or many DEI programs enshrined in the United States Constitution. This is the way we've been doing it for 200 plus years in American history. Why that's okay, but it's not okay when it comes to other arenas like universities and businesses. Why is it a 5-alarm fire when it comes to these other institutions in our country, but it's totally okay when it's the exact reason why you have political power in the first place? Explain to me that, right-wingers.